So I think, the greatest problem today is just recognizing that we are being controlled by ideas that are somebody else's ideas. They're certainly not ours. Culture is a paradigm. Countries have paradigms, companies have paradigms, and of course individuals have paradigms. And those paradigms are very deep-rooted, and they really control us. The bizarre part of the whole thing is that we didn't write the code for the program that's controlling our life. Someone else did. We have a program in our subconscious mind, and much the same as the programs in the computer. And that program in our subconscious mind controls our behavior. And for the most part, in 90 high percent of the cases, the program was written by people who are totally ignorant. It's a very difficult thing to change. You don't just haul it out like you would out of your computer. It really has to be altered and has to be changed. It takes a respectable understanding to do that. It takes a lot of discipline, which is the probable reason so few people do change very much in their whole life. And we're all an expression of that mind. And I see mind as a movement, not a thing. So I think there's a tremendous educational job has to be done. Educational institutions that are set up in the world are not doing it. And they've never done it. I think there's a lot of people trying to study this and they're going about it the wrong way. I think there's a lot of people writing books that really don't understand what they're saying. I think the secret to understanding how to really get to know ourselves, we have to go to people that have demonstrated by results they really know what they're talking about. Like I always say that 80% of the people that are teaching have never done what they're teaching. And if you haven't done it, I don't think you really understand it. So it's not what do you know, it's what do you do. For years, companies were paying people based on what they thought they knew. It was gone by a degree. And the degree didn't indicate they knew anything at all. I think we have to go by what they do. I was very fortunate when I started to study. The first man that helped me, the first person that helped me was a man. And he's the one that introduced me to this book. This I've got it held with an elastic now. It's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He knew what he was talking about. And he said, if you do exactly what I tell you, you can have anything you want. Well, I didn't believe that, but I believed he believed it. I looked at their results before I started to pay attention to them. And that has been sort of a guiding principle in my life. I believe if you want to learn something, you have to go to someone that knows more than you do. And that's really what I've done. And I've had 5 or 6 people that I've followed over the past 60 years. It's been 60 years since I started to study this. I followed that principle, and I think it was a good, sound principle to follow. See, here's the book. It's falling apart. I didn't read it. I keep reading it. It isn't something I read. I'm reading it. I read it every day. Now, that was a commitment that I made on the 21st of October, 1961. Ray Stanford said, if you read that every day, do what I tell you. He said, you can have anything you want. Well, of course, I didn't believe that, and I said I would do it. And I don't know why I did it, because I never did anything that I said I would do up to that point. But for this, I don't know why. And I started, and I've never stopped reading it. I learned a lesson from Earl Nightingale. I have here a book holder. It holds a book open on my desk. Earl Nightingale had one sitting on his desk. The first time I met him, it was in 1966. And I spent an hour with him. I asked him, I said, what is that on his desk? He says, a book holder. Hold my book open. And I said, why do you have it like that? I'm going to read that until I understand it. He said, what, the book? No, he said, that page. And I questioned him. I said, what do you mean? He said, no amount of reading or memorizing is going to make you successful. It's the understanding and application of wise thoughts that really count. Mm-hmm. So he said, I learned a long time ago that if I kept reading the same thing, I would start to understand and I would start to apply it. I immediately started to look for a book holder. And the secret is to read the same thing over and over and over again. So I learned a long time ago that if you want to learn, you've got to understand what it is you're reading, and you've got to apply it. And the proof is in the pudding. Are the results there? And if the results aren't there, then you really haven't learned anything. You got to change the results. By their fruits, you'll know them. You can tell by the results they're getting whether they know what they're talking about. I think the trick is to keep reading it over and over and over. Repetition is the first law of reading. That's how we became programmed. It was repetition. First of all, we're programmed genetically. Mom's DNA and dad's DNA came together, and that formed the nucleus of us. And 280 days later, then we made our debut on the planet, and the programming then continued by the environment that we're surrounded by. If you take a look at the results, and almost all welfare recipients are third, fourth, fifth generation welfare recipients. And it continues until someone breaks out of that, which takes a fair amount of strength and understanding and probably criticism.
What's the paradigm that's the biggest block in people's minds and lives today that if someone's listening or watching right now that they should be aware of and start to work through?
First of all, I don't think many people understand what a paradigm is. And then when they do understand what it is, it takes them a respectable amount of time to try and understand what their own paradigm is and then how to change it. Like, I'm frequently asked, how do you recognize your paradigm? Well, the best way to recognize your paradigm, possibly the only way, is to really observe your own performance, your own behavioral patterns, your own thought patterns, how you meet and greet, how you treat people, how you treat situations. Our behavior is controlled to an enormous degree by our paradigm. Our paradigm I see as a multitude of concepts that are fixed in our subconscious mind that control almost all of our habitual behavior. And almost all of our behavior is habitual. Almost all the person's behavior is controlled by their paradigm. And if they start to pay attention to it and ask themselves, why am I doing this? Why do you do this? Why do I do this? We're doing things that don't produce results, but we keep doing them. And sometimes they do produce results we don't want, but we keep doing it. People have got to think. Are you familiar with Earl Nightingale's Strangest Secret record? He quotes Albert Schweitzer being interviewed by a reporter in London.
I'd like to tell you about the strangest secret in the world. Not long ago, Albert Schweitzer, the great doctor and Nobel Prize winner, was being interviewed in London, and a reporter asked him, "Doctor, what's wrong with men today?" The great doctor was silent a moment, and then he said, "Men simply don't think."
And I believe that's true. If you listen to most conversations, it's obvious the person's not thinking, or they would never say what they're saying. Or if you stand back and observe their behavior, they would never do what they're doing if they were thinking. So I think, the greatest problem today is just recognizing that we are being controlled by ideas that are somebody else's ideas. They're certainly not ours.
우리가 생각을 하지 않으면 어떤 것을 깊게 생각하는 사람들의 상상 속에 우리는 살게 돼요. 우리가 아무런 상상을 하지 않을수록 우리는 여전히 다른 사람의 상상물 속에서만 살게 되는 거죠.
Our responsibility to recognize that and break out of it. Like I always say, a person doesn't earn $100,000 a year because they want 100 a year. They're earning 100 a year because they're not aware of how to earn 100 a month. People are not alone and lonely because they want to be alone and lonely. They're alone and lonely because they're not aware of how to develop meaningful relationships. People don't live in sick bodies because they enjoy it. They live in sick bodies because they're not aware of how to maintain health in their body. So awareness is really the key. And the paradigm is blocking that. We learn the wrong thing. Like we're taught, read the book, put it away, get the next book, read that book, put it away. They don't know anything. They've read all these books, but their behavior would indicate they've never read anything.
I feel that you're obviously a teacher in the law of attraction. How about what are some of the myths with the law of attraction when it comes to money?
When it comes to law of attraction, it's almost synonymous with ignorance. Hardly anybody understands the law of attraction. We didn't explain it properly on that movie, didn't get into it in depth. Attraction is it's a secondary law. It isn't a primary law. The primary law is the law of vibration. And the law of vibration decrees that everything moves, nothing rests. We live in an ocean of motion. And what we're really attempting to do is raise the frequency that we're operating on. We want to operate on a higher frequency all the time. This thing we're living in is a molecular structure in a very high speed of vibration. And the brain is an electronic switching station that alters the vibration we're in. Well, we operate on a frequency, and the only thing we can attract to us is that which is in resonance with us. So the reaction is actually attraction. You can only attract to you what vibrates in harmony with you. So if we see things coming into our life that we don't like, let's understand what we don't like is in harmony with something inside. When you want something that's on a higher frequency, you've got to operate on that higher frequency, because all the thoughts and things that you require are on that higher frequency. Most people, I say, are living on an AM frequency trying to listen to FM music. It doesn't work.
How do you know what vibration or frequency level you're operating at?
I think the only way to do it is by the results you're getting.
Right, makes sense.
See, the results do tell the truth. They don't lie. And will do anything for us. Whatever we ask, it'll give us. And we're asking in thought. So what we want to do is take a look. What have I been thinking? Take a look at your results. You'll know what you're thinking. That's how you can tell the frequency you're on. And if you're continually having problems in all areas of your life, you're on the wrong vibration, very low level of vibration. And we can change it. There's music in this room right now. There's music in your room. You may not hear it, but we know it's here. It's being broadcast and it's in the room. And we don't hear it because our ears are not operating on the frequency the music is being broadcast on. But if we turned on a radio, the radio picks up on that frequency, way up onto a higher frequency, and we can hear it.
What would you want someone to do straight after they stop listening to this episode?
I'd like to ask them to ask themselves, what do I really want in this life? What do I really want? And take a pen and write it down. See, your purpose is why you're alive, why you get out of bed in the morning. And some people never figure that out. They never even give it any thought. Probably the most important question a person can ask themselves. And there's two forms of income. One's satisfaction, the other is money. But I said, if you're not getting satisfaction from what you do, you should quit it. Because I said, that's where it comes in. That's why we should figure out what we love to do and then dedicate our life to it. What do I love to do? Sit down. What would I really love to do? How would I love to spend my life? That's what we should do. And unfortunately, most people never get involved in that exercise.